Karoline Leavitt stood poised on the House floor, her youthful determination clashing with the seasoned cynicism around her. Adam Schiff, the impeachment titan, watched with a smirk, his confidence practically oozing. But what happened next? A razor-sharp takedown left Congress speechless and turned the political tide upside down. Before we dive into this explosive saga, drop a comment with where you're watching from. If you crave gripping tales like this, hit subscribe, because tomorrow we've got another jaw-dropping story lined up. Get ready for a wild ride through Washington's power games, where one speech changes everything, and nothing is as it seems. Washington, D.C., March 2025 was a pressure cooker of partisan fury. The impeachment inquiry into the sitting president had split the nation down the middle, with every news cycle fueling the fire. At the heart of it all stood Adam Schiff, the 64-year-old chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, a veteran Democrat who'd cemented his legacy leading the 2019 Trump impeachment. To his supporters, he was a bulldog of democracy. To his detractors, a scheming puppet master. Across the aisle, Karoline Leavitt, a 28-year-old Republican firebrand from New Hampshire, was clawing her way up the ranks. Once a press aide in Trump's White House, she'd won her House seat with a mix of grit and sharp rhetoric. But in the cutthroat halls of Congress, her youth was a liability and her ambition a target. Leavitt knew the game was rigged against her from the start. She'd heard the whispers, too green, too brash, too female. Her colleagues didn't bother hiding their skepticism, and one in particular, James Carter, a grizzled 30-year Republican veteran, made it his mission to keep her in check. It started small, a raised eyebrow here, a dismissive grunt there. But today, in a closed-door GOP strategy session, Carter decided to turn the knife. "You actually think you belong here, don't you, Leavitt?" Carter's voice cut through the room like a dull blade, his Texas drawl dripping with condescension. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his gray suit straining against his broad frame. "This ain't a playground, kid. You're a little girl playing dress-up in a man's world." The room went quiet, a dozen pairs of eyes darting between them. Leavitt didn't flinch. She straightened her shoulders, her voice steady as steel. "Funny, James. Last I checked, I won my seat same as you, except I didn't need 3 decades and a good old boys club to do it." Carter's lip curled into a sneer. "Oh, bless your heart, darlin'. You think that fancy press gig under Trump makes you a player? You're a footnote, Leavitt. A loudmouth conhawk who doesn't know where she's standing or who she's messing with." "I know exactly who I'm messing with," she fired back, her hazel eyes locking onto his. "A has-been who's coasted on handshake deals and empty promises. You're scared, Carter. Scared a little girl might outshine you." A few stifled chuckles rippled through the room, but Carter's face darkened. He jabbed a finger at her. "You watch your mouth, rookie. This impeachment mess is bigger than your ego. Schiff's running the show, and you're out of your depth. Keep pushing, and you'll drown." Leavitt smirked, leaning forward. "Schiff's not invincible, and neither are you. I'm not here to play nice or kiss rings. I'm here to win." The tension hung thick, but the meeting moved on. Carter's words stuck with her, though, not because they stung, but because they lit a fire. She'd prove him wrong. She'd prove them all wrong. And Adam Schiff, he was the real prize. Later that day, Leavitt crossed paths with Schiff himself in the Capitol corridor. He was flanked by aides, his trademark calm demeanor masking the storm he'd unleashed with the impeachment hearings. She'd studied him for months, his measured speeches, his knack for twisting facts into narratives. He'd built a fortress of credibility, but she saw cracks. Cracks she could exploit. "Congresswoman Leavitt," Schiff said, pausing as their eyes met. His tone was polite, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "I hear you've been making waves. Careful not to capsize?" She matched his coolness. "And I hear you've been steering this impeachment like it's your personal crusade, Mr. Chairman. Careful not to sink under the weight of your own spin." Schiff's smile tightened. "Bold words for someone so new. You think you can take me on?" "I've been in this game longer than you've been alive." "Time doesn't make you right," she shot back. "It just makes you entrenched. The American people deserve better than your theater, and I'm going to give it to them." He chuckled, low and dismissive. "You're ambitious, I'll give you that. But ambition without experience is just noise. You'll learn that the hard way. And you'll learn, I'm not here to learn lessons from you, Leavitt replied, her voice ice cold. I'm here to teach one. Schiff's aide shifted uncomfortably as he gave her a long, appraising look before walking off. Leavitt watched him go, her pulse racing. This wasn't just a sparring match. It was a declaration. She'd been dismissed too many times, by Carter, by Schiff, by the old guard who thought youth meant weakness. But she wasn't just some upstart. At 28, she'd already outmaneuvered seasoned opponents to win her seat. She'd honed her instincts in Trump's chaotic White House, learning how to wield words like weapons. Now, in Washington's unforgiving arena, she had her sights set on something bigger, dismantling Schiff's carefully crafted empire. Carter's taunts echoed in her mind, a little girl who doesn't know where she's standing. She knew exactly where she stood, on the edge of a defining moment. The impeachment had turned Schiff into a lightning rod, and Leavitt saw her chance. He wasn't untouchable. He was vulnerable. Every misstep he'd made, every exaggerated claim, every skewed testimony was a thread she could pull. She wasn't just fighting for her own credibility. She was fighting for a narrative the country desperately needed, one where truth trumped theater. Back in her office, Leavitt paced, her mind racing. Carter's mockery was a sideshow. Schiff was the main event. She'd spent weeks poring over transcripts, dissecting his every move. He'd overplayed his hand, and she'd make him pay for it. But first, she needed a plan. And allies who wouldn't buckle under pressure. The stakes were sky high, and Washington didn't forgive missteps. She'd get one shot to take Schiff down, and it had to be perfect. Failure wasn't an option, not when she'd come this far, not when she had so much to prove. Karoline Leavitt didn't waste a second after her run-in with Adam Schiff. Back in her cramped Capitol Hill office, she dumped a stack of impeachment hearing transcripts on her desk, her jaw set tight. She'd been tracking Schiff for months, every speech, every interview, every carefully worded soundbite. The man was a master of spin, but she'd spotted the seams in his armor. Exaggerated claims, selectively edited witness statements, conclusions that didn't hold up under scrutiny. If she was going to take him down, it wouldn't be with bluster. It'd be with precision. And for that, she needed a team she could trust. Sarah Nin, her closest advisor, sat across from her, flipping through a legal pad scribbled with notes. At 40, Sarah was a seasoned political operative who'd worked her way up from local campaigns to Capitol Hill. She was sharp, loyal, and unafraid to call Leavitt out, a rare combo in Washington. Next to her was David Holt, a 50-year-old legal expert with a resume that included stints at top D.C. law firms. His graying temples and calm demeanor screamed experience, but his skepticism about Leavitt's plan was already bubbling to the surface. "We've got something here," Leavitt said, tapping a highlighted page. Schiff's October 15th hearing. He claimed a witness tied the president to a direct quid pro quo, but the transcript shows the guy said no such thing. Schiff twisted it on live TV. Sarah nodded, her brow furrowing. It's a solid hit. He's banking on nobody double-checking the raw testimony. But Karoline, this isn't a slam dunk. Schiff's got a machine behind him, lawyers, PR flacks, the whole Democratic playbook. You swing at him and they'll swing back twice as hard. Leavitt leaned forward, her voice low and fierce. Let them. I'm not here to play defense, Sarah. He's overreached, and I'm going to bury him with his own words. David cleared his throat, his tone measured but edged with doubt. Hold up, Karoline. You're talking about taking on a guy who's been in Congress since you were in diapers. Schiff's not some rookie you can spook with a gotcha moment. He's weathered worse than this and come out on top. You sure you've got the chops for this fight? Leavitt's eyes narrowed. You think I don't know who he is, David? I've watched him dodge scandals and flip narratives for years. But he's sloppy now, too confident. I've got the facts, and I've got the guts. That's enough. David leaned back, crossing his arms. Facts don't win in Washington. Optics do. You're 28, untested, and half the Hill already thinks you're a lightweight. You misstep, and Schiff will make you a laughingstock. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying you're not ready. The room crackled with tension. Sarah shot David a sidelong glance before jumping in. He's got a point, Karoline. I'm with you on this. Schiff's vulnerable, but David's right about the risk. One wrong move, and you're not just toast with the Democrats, our own party'll ditch you. Carter's already itching to see you crash. Leavitt slammed her palm on the desk, her voice rising. Carter's a dinosaur who's scared of his own shadow. And you two, if you're so worried about risks, why the hell are you here? I didn't hire you to hold my hand. I hired you to help me win. Sarah bristled, her tone sharpening. We're here because we believe in you, not because we're yes men. But you're acting like this is a solo mission. Schiff's got allies everywhere. Committee chairs, donors, media lapdogs. You ignore us, and you're walking into a buzzsaw. Blind? I'm not blind, Leavitt snapped. I've been up all night dissecting this crap. Every word he said since the hearing started. November 3rd, he cherry-picked a diplomat's testimony to imply a smoking gun. The guy never said it. Schiff's betting on the public swallowing his version whole. I'm going to shove the truth down his throat. David rubbed his temples, his patience thinning. You're missing the point. It's not just about being right. It's about surviving the fallout. You think Schiff won't have a counter ready? He'll dig up dirt, spin it, and feed it to CNN before you finish your speech. You're good, Karoline, but you're green. You don't know how dirty this gets. Leavitt stood, pacing the small room, her voice a mix of fire and ice. Dirty? I cut my teeth in Trump's White House, David. I've seen dirty. Backstabbing staffers, leaking memos, press ambushes. I didn't just survive it. I thrived. Schiff's not some untouchable god. He's a man who's gotten too comfortable, and I'm going to knock him off his pedestal. Sarah stood too, her hands raised in a calming gesture. Nobody's saying he's untouchable. We're saying you need a tighter plan. You've got the ammo? Great. But how do you deliver it without blowing yourself up? You go too hard and they'll paint you as a reckless kid. Too soft, and you're irrelevant. We need a strategy, not a kamikaze run. Leavitt stopped pacing, her gaze flicking between them. Fine. Strategy. Here's what I've got. I hit him on the house floor, public and live. No closed-door leaks, no backroom deals, just me, the mic, and the truth. I'll call out 3 specific lies. October 15th, November 3rd, and that December 9th presser where he flat-out invented a timeline. I'll keep it tight, factual, no grandstanding. Schiff won't know what hit him. David snorted, unconvinced. You think he won't see it coming? His team's probably got eyes on you already. One whiff of this and they'll prep a rebuttal, or worse. Then we move fast, Leavitt shot back. I've got a slot tomorrow afternoon. We lock this down tonight, every word, every pause. Sarah, you polish the delivery. David, you triple-check the legal angles. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you this is happening. Sarah sighed, relenting. All right, you're the boss. But if this goes south, don't say we didn't warn you. It won't, Leavitt said, her voice ironclad. Schiff's had his run. Tomorrow, I take the wheel. David shook his head but grabbed a transcript anyway. You're stubborn as hell, Karoline. Hope it's enough. It's more than enough, she replied, a glint in her eye. It's everything. The trio worked late into the night, hammering out her speech. Leavitt's resolve didn't waver, but the cracks in her team were widening. Sarah's caution clashed with her recklessness. David's doubt gnawed at her confidence. She ignored it all, fueled by a single thought. Schiff was going down, and she'd be the one to do it. This wasn't just a fight, it was her proving ground, and she'd be damned if she let anyone, ally or enemy, stand in her way. The House chamber buzzed with restless energy on the afternoon of March 11, 2025. The impeachment hearings had dragged on for months, and the air was thick with partisan fatigue. Karoline Leavitt, 28 and unyielding, strode to the podium, her notes clutched tight. She'd spent the night refining every line with Sarah Gwynn and David Holt, her resolve forged in the fire of their doubts. This was it, her shot to dismantle Adam Schiff, the untouchable titan of the impeachment saga. The room hushed as she adjusted the microphone, her hazel eyes scanning the sea of faces, allies, skeptics, and enemies alike. Mr. Speaker, Leavitt began, her voice steady and clear, I rise today not for partisan games, but for the truth. We swore an oath to the American people, to uphold justice, not to twist it. Yet under Chairman Schiff's leadership, this impeachment inquiry has strayed far from that promise. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Schiff, seated near the front, leaned forward, his expression a mask of calm curiosity. Leavitt didn't pause. Let's start with October 15th. The chairman claimed a key witness confirmed a quid pro quo tying the president to foreign interference. I've read the transcript, line by line. That witness said no such thing. Schiff invented the link. The room tensed. She flipped a page, her tone sharpening. November 3rd. He told this body a diplomat's testimony proved a cover-up. The diplomat's actual words? I have no direct knowledge. Another distortion. And December 9th, in a press conference, he fabricated a timeline of events. The evidence doesn't support. These aren't mistakes. They're deliberate. Schiff's calm cracked, his jaw tightening. Leavitt pressed on, her voice rising with controlled fury. The American people deserve facts, not fiction. But Chairman Schiff has fed them a narrative built on half-truths and outright lies. He's not seeking justice, he's staging a show. And we're letting it happen. The chamber erupted. Republicans thumped desks in approval. Democrats hissed in protest. Schiff shot to his feet, his voice booming over the chaos. Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I will not stand here and let this reckless child slander my integrity. Congresswoman Leavitt's baseless attack is a disgrace to this institution. She's an opportunist, plain and simple, chasing headlines at the expense of honor. Leavitt didn't blink. Call me what you want, Mr. Chairman, but the transcripts don't lie. You do. I've got the receipts, and they're damning. You've manipulated this process to prop up your own agenda. That's not honor, that's cowardice. Gasps echoed through the room. Speaker Kevin McCarthy banged his gavel, struggling to restore order. The gentle lady will proceed, but both sides will refrain from personal insults. Schiff's eyes blazed, but he sat, his rebuttal still sharp. You're out of your league, Leavitt. You think cherry-picking lines proves anything? I've spent years defending this democracy while you were still in school. This is a cheap stunt, nothing more. Then explain the discrepancies, she fired back, holding up the transcript stack. Explain why your truth doesn't match the record. You can't, because it's a house of cards. You've overplayed your hand, and I'm calling your bluff. The room froze, every eye locked on the duel. Leavitt's voice dropped, deliberate and piercing. This isn't about me or you, Mr. Chairman. It's about trust. When you twist testimony to fit your story, you don't just undermine this inquiry, you undermine us all. We can't let one man's ambition erode what we stand for. Silence fell, heavy and electric. For a moment, she'd done it. Cut through Schiff's armor with surgical precision. Republicans nodded fiercely, even some Democrats shifted uncomfortably. But the victory was short-lived. James Carter, her own party's grizzled skeptic, stood up, his drawl slicing the quiet. Mr. Speaker, I've heard enough, Carter growled. This little lady's got guts, I'll give her that. But she's out of line. Schiff's no saint, but Leavitt's grandstanding, here's a liability. She's stirring up a hornet's nest we don't need. Sit down, girl, before you sink us all. Leavitt spun toward him, her voice ice cold. I'm not your girl, Carter. And I'm not sinking anyone. I'm exposing a fraud. If you're too scared to fight, that's on you. I'm done cowering. Carter's face reddened. You're a fool, Leavitt. Schiff'll eat you alive, and I ain't cleaning up your mess. Then don't, she snapped. I don't need your babysitting. I need you to grow a spine. The chamber exploded again. Cheers, jeers, and gavel bangs. Schiff seized the moment, standing once more. See, Mr. Speaker? She can't even keep her own party in line. This isn't leadership. It's chaos. Congresswoman Leavitt wants to lecture me on trust. She's the one fracturing her own ranks. Leavitt turned back to him, unflinching. My ranks aren't the issue. Your lies are. You've dodged accountability too long, Schiff. Call it chaos if you want. I call it a reckoning. A lone Republican clapped, then another, until half the room roared in support. Democrats countered with boos, a cacophony of division. Leavitt stepped back, her chest heaving, her point made. She'd landed every blow. October 15th, November 3rd, December 9th. Each a dagger in Schiff's credibility. The stunned silence that followed wasn't just shock, it was awe. At 28, she'd turned the house floor into her battlefield, and Schiff was bleeding. But the fallout was instant. Schiff's allies swarmed, whispering furiously. Carter glared from his seat, his disdain palpable. Other Republicans hesitated, some impressed, others wary of the storm she'd unleashed. Leavitt felt the weight of every stare, every muttered curse. She'd humiliated Schiff, yes, but she'd also painted a target on her back. Her speech wasn't just a takedown, it was a declaration of war. Schiff leaned to an aide, his voice barely audible but venomous. She thinks she's won. Let her enjoy it. For now. Leavitt caught the words, her lips curling into a faint smirk. Bring it on, she muttered under her breath. She'd struck first and struck hard, but she knew Schiff wouldn't go quietly, and neither would Carter. The house floor had been her stage and she'd owned it. Now the real fight was just beginning. She'd proven her mettle, but at what cost? The enemies she'd made today weren't just across the aisle, they were in her own camp, and they were already plotting her downfall. Karoline Leavitt's speech hit Washington like a shockwave. By the evening of March 11, 2025, clips of her takedown of Adam Schiff were lighting up cable news and social media. Conservative outlets like Fox News hailed her as a rising GOP titan, replaying her sharpest lines October 15th, November 3rd, December 9th on loop. Hashtags like Leavitt v. Schiff trended, her name suddenly a rallying cry for Republicans fed up with the impeachment circus. But the praise came with a flip side. The backlash was swift, brutal, and unrelenting. The Democrats struck first. By morning, party leaders branded her a wrecking ball in press briefings. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, though no longer in the chair, weighed in on MSNBC. Congresswoman Leavitt's stunt yesterday was a cheap ploy to undermine a legitimate inquiry. She's not a truth seeker, she's a saboteur. Schiff's allies piled on, flooding airwaves with accusations of bad faith. CNN ran a segment titled, The Opportunist, Who is Karoline Leavitt? A 10-minute hit piece questioning her motives and experience. Leavitt expected the Democratic pushback. She'd braced for it. What she didn't see coming was the fracture in her own ranks. Back in her office, she flipped through news alerts when Sarah Nguyen burst in, her face taut with worry. Karoline, we've got a problem. Carter's talking to the press. Leavitt's stomach dropped. What's that bastard saying now? Sarah handed her a tablet, a Politico headline glaring back. GOP veteran slams Leavitt, she staged it for fame. The article quoted James Carter unloading venom. That speech, pure theater. Leavitt's been plotting this for weeks, feeding us half-truths to look like a hero. She's a glory hound, not a leader. I've seen her game plan. She's all ambition, no substance. Leavitt's hands shook as she read. Half-truths? Game plan? That's a lie? He's got nothing? Doesn't matter, Sarah said, her voice sharp. He's claiming he's got memos, notes from our meetings. Says you cherry-picked Schiff's record to boost your profile. True or not, it's sticking. Leavitt slammed the tablet down. Carter's a coward. He's mad I showed him up, so he's stabbing me in the back. Let him prove it. I've got nothing to hide. Sarah hesitated, then spoke low. Karoline, I warned you. You went too hard too fast. Carter's not alone. Half the caucus thinks you're a loose cannon. They're scared you've handed the Dems a weapon to paint us all as reckless. Then they're spineless, Leavitt snapped. I didn't sign up to play it safe. I signed up to fight. If they can't handle the heat, that's their problem. It's our problem, Sarah shot back. You're burning bridges we can't rebuild. I'm on your side, but this, it's a mess. Before Leavitt could respond, David Holt walked in, his expression grim. She's right, Karoline. I just got off with a source at the RNC. They're pissed. Say you've turned a winnable narrative into a circus. I told you to ease up, but you wouldn't listen. Leavitt spun on him, her voice rising. Ease up? While Schiff twists the truth and walks all over us? I did what you two were too afraid to do. I hit back. And now? You're bailing? David's jaw tightened. I'm not bailing. I'm facing reality. You humiliated Schiff, sure, but you've alienated half our party doing it. Carter's leak is just the start. You're on your own now. Fine, Leavitt said, her tone icy. "I don't need babysitters, go lick your wounds." "I'll handle this." Sarah stepped closer, her voice softer but firm. "Karoline, we're not the enemy. But you're blind if you think you can win this solo. Schiff's not sitting idle. He's plotting. You've got no backup, and Carter's feeding him ammo." Leavitt's eyes flashed. "Then let him plot. I'll bury him again. As for Carter, he's a dead man walking. I'll deal with him too." Sarah and David exchanged a look, then left without another word. The door clicked shut, and Leavitt stood alone, the silence deafening. Her team, her lifeline, had cracked under pressure. She'd pushed too hard, and now she was isolated. But she wouldn't bend. Not now, not ever. Meanwhile, across the Capitol, Adam Schiff huddled with his inner circle. His calm facade was gone, replaced by a cold fury. "She thinks she's untouchable," he muttered to an aide, pacing his office. "That little speech was cute, but she's overplayed her hand. Dig into her, everything, past votes, old jobs, anything we can use. She wants a war, she'll get one." His chief of staff nodded. "Carter's already reaching out, says he's got dirt, some internal stuff from her camp. We can spin it. Leavitt is the schemer, not you." Schiff smirked. "Good. Let her own people tear her apart. By the time I'm done, she'll wish she'd never stepped on that floor." Back in her office, Leavitt scrawled X, watching the storm unfold. Conservative fans cheered her on. Karoline's a legend. But the hate was louder. Fraud, clout chaser. Carter's leak had legs. A Washington Post piece cited anonymous GOP sources accusing her of staging the whole fight. Her approval rating spiked with the base, but moderates were souring fast. Even Fox pundits wavered. Bold move, but reckless. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're finished, kid. Should have listened to Carter." She deleted it, her jaw clenched. The betrayal stung, but the real blow was Sarah and David's retreat. She'd counted on them, and they'd cut and run. Now Schiff was circling, Carter was leaking, and her party was wobbling. She'd won the battle, but the war was turning ugly. Leavitt leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The cost was steep, her allies gone, her name a lightning rod. But she wasn't done. Schiff thought he'd outlast her, Carter thought he'd bury her. They were wrong. She'd struck first, and she'd strike again. Victory had a price, and she'd pay it. Alone if she had to. The fight was hers now, and she'd see it through no matter how bloody it got. Karoline Leavitt sat at her desk, riding the high of her house floor triumph. The headlines still buzzed, some calling her a GOP savior, others a reckless upstart, but she felt untouchable. Schiff was reeling, Carter was scrambling, and even her fractured team couldn't dim her shine. She'd weathered the backlash and come out stronger, or so she thought. Then, at 10:17 a.m., her phone lit up with a breaking news alert that stopped her cold. The Washington Post had dropped a bombshell. Leavitt's secret deal. Docs show ties to Schiff allies in 2020. Leaked emails from her time as a Trump press aide revealed she'd once collaborated with a pro-Schiff advocacy group, trading favors for campaign support during her first House run. The evidence was damning. Statements, time signatures, a quid pro quo laid bare. The narrative flipped overnight. Leavitt wasn't a crusader. She was a hypocrite who played both sides. Schiff pounced. By noon, he was on CNN, his voice dripping with righteous indignation. "Congresswoman Leavitt built her attack on me with lies about integrity. Now we see the truth. She's no stranger to backroom deals. She's a fraud, and the American people deserve better." His allies ran with it, flooding X with, "Leavitt lied." Democrats crowed. Even Republicans, who'd cheered her speech, went silent. Carter twisted the knife deeper, smirking in a Fox interview. "Told y'all she was a snake. Staged that whole Schiff fight to climb the ladder. Now look at her. Done." Leavitt's office became a ghost town. Sarah Nguyen and David Holt didn't call, didn't even text. Her inbox overflowed with hate mail. Traitor. Liar. Her approval ratings tanked. Conservative fans who'd idolized her turned venomous. The Post ran a follow-up. GOP star falls, Leavitt's career in freefall. Schiff had turned her weapon against her, and she was drowning in the wreckage. By evening, she faced the press outside the Capitol, her face pale but composed. "These leaks are a smear," she said, voice steady. I've fought for transparency, Schiff's the one hiding, this changes nothing. But it did. The crowd jeered, cameras flashed, and she walked away, the weight of defeat sinking in. She'd miscalculated, underestimated Schiff's ruthlessness. He'd won, cleanly, brutally. Or had he? Alone in her office that night, Leavitt poured a glass of bourbon and stared at the city lights. Her phone sat dark. No allies, no lifeline. The world saw her ruined, a 28-year-old flame snuffed out by her own past. But then her lips curled into a faint, cryptic smile. She opened her laptop, typed a quick email to an unnamed contact. It's done. Phase 2 starts now, and hit send. She leaned back, sipping her drink. The leak? Her deal with Schiff's crew? Maybe it was a trap she'd set years ago, a chess move no one saw coming. Maybe she'd planned to fall, to rise higher, or maybe she was bluffing, clinging to a shred of control. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. Leavitt wasn't finished. Not yet. Karoline Leavitt's tale teaches us a brutal truth. Ambition can lift you high, but unchecked, it blinds you to the knives at your back. Her rise and fall reveal that power isn't just won with skill, it's kept with trust. In life, we too must balance drive with loyalty or risk losing everything to our own hubris. Thanks for joining this wild ride. What's your takeaway? Would you have played Leavitt's game differently? Drop a comment below with your thoughts and where you're watching from. Love these twists? Subscribe. We've got more unpredictable stories coming your way.